I'm still trying to wrap my head around what happened last weekend. It feels like a bad dream I can't wake up from. One minute, I was sitting in an upscale restaurant with my boyfriend of 2 years, and the next, he was walking out the door after loudly declaring I was ugly and that a girl like me should be grateful he even dated me. He dumped me right there in front of his work buddies, left me with the entire dinner bill, and walked off laughing with them while I sat in shock. Let me back up. I had been with Justin for 2 years. This wasn't some casual fling. We had our little routines. Sunday, Netflix marathons, awkward holiday dinners with each other's families, even tried a yoga class together once. I thought we were solid. We'd even talked about maybe moving in together that summer. Sure, Justin had his annoying habits like leaving his socks everywhere and texting during movies, and he'd make helpful comments about my appearance sometimes. That dress isn't flattering? Maybe try a different hairstyle. I always brushed those off as him being honest. Looking back, I realised how naive that was. So, last Friday, Justin invited me to dinner with some of his work friends. He'd never included me in his work life before, always said it wasn't professional to mix business and personal, so I was actually excited. I even bought a new outfit and spent forever getting ready, full YouTube makeup tutorial mode, using the fancy straightener I save for special occasions. I arrived at this super expensive downtown restaurant, one of those places with tiny portions and no prices on the menu. Justin was already there with 2 guys from his office, Luke and Peter. The moment I walked up, I sensed a weird vibe. Justin barely looked at me, just muttered, "You're late." I was only 2 minutes late. Parking was awful. I sat down apologising under my breath, and he gave my outfit a once-over with a disapproving frown. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, he said, "Oh, you decided to wear that?" His friends exchanged looks, and I felt my face burn. For the record, I was wearing a dark blue dress I thought looked nice. Nothing outrageous or inappropriate. I let out a nervous laugh and said something like, "Did I miss a dress code?" But he just shrugged and mentioned they'd already ordered appetizers without me. Oof. The next hour was miserable. It was basically Justin and his friends talking about work stuff I didn't understand. Whenever I tried to chime in, Justin talked over me or acted like I was clueless. At one point, I mentioned a story about a customer at the retail store I manage, and Justin waved it off with, "Chloe works in retail. She doesn't really get how things operate in the real business world." Said in front of everyone, as if my job of 3 years was a joke. I could feel myself shrinking in my chair, wondering if he'd always been this condescending and I somehow missed it. Later, Luke asked how Justin and I met. I began to explain that his co-worker Rachel, my best friend, introduced us, but Justin cut me off. He snorted. "Yeah, Rachel felt sorry for her, so I agreed to take Chloe out as a favour." Then he laughed. My stomach dropped. That wasn't how it happened at all. For the record, Rachel had warned me about Justin's ego, but said he was a decent guy underneath. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. I excused myself to the bathroom so I wouldn't cry in front of them. In a stall, I texted Rachel asking what on earth was going on. Before she could reply, I got a notification. Justin had just tagged himself at the restaurant on Instagram with the caption, "Boys, night out," like I wasn't even there. Rachel started calling me, but I let it go to voicemail because I couldn't break down on the phone right then. I splashed water on my face, fixed my makeup, and gave myself a little pep talk to get through the rest of this nightmare dinner. When I got back to the table, the 3 of them went silent, clearly having been talking about me. The entrees arrived, and Justin immediately made a snide comment about my food. I'd ordered a simple pasta, one of the cheaper dishes because I was worried about the cost, and he goes, "Carbs, huh? Bold choice for someone watching her figure." It was like a slap. I lost my appetite and just pushed the pasta around, fighting the urge to cry. I was counting down the minutes until I could leave. Then Peter asked Justin about some big presentation at work, and Justin lit up, bragging about how his boss loved his ideas and how he was basically running the whole project now. That's when it clicked for me. Just a week ago, he'd been nervous about his 5-minute segment in that presentation. Now, he was the star. It was like he lived in an alternate reality where he was the office hero. I remember looking at him and thinking, who is this guy? Finally, the check came. Justin picked up the bill, glanced at it, and then slid it over to me. I thought maybe he wanted me to see the total, around 360, or chip in. Instead, he says, casual as anything, "You know what, Chloe? I don't think this is working out." I just stared. "What's not working?" I managed to ask. He raised his voice a little and said, "Us. This relationship. I'm not attracted to you anymore, so I think we should break up." Loud enough that people at nearby tables could hear. I was completely blindsided. Who breaks up with their girlfriend of 2 years in the middle of a restaurant, in front of an audience, out of nowhere? I stammered something like, "Are you serious? Here? Now?" But he was already standing up and putting on his jacket. He looked down at me with this awful smirk and delivered the final blow. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you as long as I did. You're not exactly a prize, Chloe." Then he turned and walked out. Luke and Peter followed him, one of them tossing a couple of bills on the table, barely enough to cover their drinks, and snickering as they left. I was left alone with a $360 bill and everyone in the restaurant staring. I wanted to sink through the floor. The waiter gave me a sympathetic look as I shakily handed over my credit card to pay. Somehow, I managed to pay and get out of there without bursting into tears on the spot. I made it to my car in the parking lot before I completely broke down. I called Rachel from the parking lot, still sobbing. She told me to stay put and that she was coming over. In about 20 minutes, she was at my apartment with 2 pints of Ben & Jerry's ice cream and a bag of my favourite cookies, the ultimate comfort kit. I collapsed into her arms the second I opened the door. We moved to the couch, and between hiccupy sobs and spoonfuls of Chunky Monkey, I recapped the entire awful evening. Rachel was livid. I think she was angrier than I was. She kept saying, "He did what?" and was literally reaching for her car keys to go find him. I had to grab her arm and beg her not to cause a scene. Once I calmed down a little, she got this serious, thoughtful look and started asking about what Justin had said regarding work. I answered, confused, and she finally sighed. "Chloe, I have to tell you something. Justin isn't who he says he is at work." She then explained that he wasn't a rising star at all. He was essentially an assistant who fetched coffee and managed schedules. All those impressive work stories were lies. The business trips he supposedly went on? Fake. The big project he said he led? He just helped with the slideshow while someone else presented. Even the fancy title on his LinkedIn, total fiction. I felt like an absolute fool. For 2 years, he'd been lying not just to me, but to everyone about who he was. What else had he lied about? After Rachel left later that night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I went into full detective mode, scrolling through old texts and photos, looking for anything that didn't add up. And there was plenty. Times he said he was working late when he wasn't. Little stories that never quite made sense. It was like our whole relationship was built on a web of half-truths I hadn't seen. Around 3 a.m, just as I was finally dozing off, a text from an unknown number lit up my phone. "Hi, this is Ethan from Justin's office. Rachel gave me your number. There are some things you should know." My heart jumped. I texted back, and he replied that he had information about Justin and would explain everything soon. That definitely got my attention. It looked like the truth was even bigger than I realised. The next few days were rough. I floated through them in a fog of tears, junk food, and Netflix. I barely dragged myself to work and back. My apartment turned into a mess of takeout containers and tissues. I kept cycling between anger, humiliation, and heartbreak, replaying that night on an endless loop and wondering how I missed all those red flags. I avoided looking at Justin's social media at first, but by Wednesday, I caved. Sure enough, he'd posted a gym selfie with some obnoxious caption about starting fresh and knowing your worth. The nerve. I almost threw my phone. It was like he was positioning himself as the hero of this story, which made my blood boil. That evening, Rachel came over with my favourite Thai takeout. She found me curled on the couch under a blanket, puffy-eyed and miserable. She didn't lecture or drop any "I told you so." She just listened as I vented, for probably the 10th time, about everything. Then she showed me her text thread with Ethan. Apparently, Justin had been telling his co-workers that he dumped me because I was clingy and desperate to marry him. What? For the record, I had never once pressured him about marriage. In fact, he was the one who used to make little jokes about our future home. I was furious. He not only humiliated me, he was painting me as some kind of crazy clinger to everyone at work. And then came the real bombshells. According to Ethan, the facade Justin built at work was crumbling fast. He had been taking credit for other people's work and messing up tasks, and management had noticed. He was on probation at work and on the verge of being fired. All those late nights he claimed to be working, probably him scrambling to fix mistakes. The supposed business trips? Pure fiction. In short, his whole successful guy act was about to collapse. While I was still reeling from that info, my phone rang. It was Justin's mum, Linda. I hesitated, but answered. She's always been really kind to me. She sounded concerned and said, "Justin told the family we'd had a small fight, but everything was fine." I bit my tongue and just said we were taking some space. Then, Linda mentioned they were all excited to see me at his birthday dinner on Saturday, and hinted that Justin said we have big news to share. I nearly choked on my drink. Big news? Was he seriously implying to them that we were getting engaged or something? After I hung up, I sat there in shock. Justin was lying to his own family, pretending we were still together, and even teasing an engagement or move-in announcement. Rachel looked as stunned as I was. "Is he delusional or just a compulsive liar?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. That's when I made up my mind. I wasn't going to ghost his family or blow this off. They had always been wonderful to me, and they deserved to know the truth about their son. But I also wasn't going to march in angrily or try to humiliate him out of revenge. I decided I would go to that dinner as planned, And when the moment was right, I calmly let the truth come out. No dramatic scene, just honesty. If Justin wanted to live in a fantasy world, fine, but I wouldn't be part of the lie. The following day, I met up with Ethan for coffee. It was a little awkward at first. We barely knew each other, but he was friendly and got straight to the point. He confirmed everything Rachel told me, and then some. Basically, Justin had been spinning tales at work just like he did with me. The team he bragged about leading was actually just him, plus 2 interns. The big presentation he claimed he ran? He was literally just clicking through slides while his boss spoke. Ethan also said Justin often badmouthed me at the office, painting me as this high-maintenance girlfriend. Wildly unfair, considering I'd been footing many of our date bills because Justin always claimed to be broke. In the middle of our coffee, Ethan got a text from their boss asking if he could come in on Saturday evening for a client emergency. He sighed about his ruined weekend plans, but that text sparked an idea. I asked, "Hey, what if you swing by Justin's birthday dinner before work? Say you need him to sign some urgent documents." Ethan caught on quickly and agreed. We exchanged info and plotted out the timing for Saturday. Just as we were wrapping up, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Justin, the first since the restaurant blow-up. "We need to talk about what happened. I might have overreacted," he wrote. "Might have?" I showed it to Ethan, who nearly snorted his coffee. I certainly wasn't going to reward Justin with a response. I let him stew in silence. The next 2 days, I geared up for the dinner. I wasn't going in blind. I gathered evidence of his lies, saved texts, photos, anything that could back me up if needed. Friday night, Rachel helped me pick an outfit. I chose a simple black dress that Justin once said made me look average, which was his twisted way of putting me down because I always got compliments in it. I barely slept that night, running through possible scenarios in my mind. On Saturday afternoon, Justin sent another message. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." The sheer gall of this guy acting like everything was peachy. I ignored him. Instead, I focused on getting ready. By 5:30 p.m, I was dressed, hair done and shaking with nerves and adrenaline. I drove to his parents' house, but halfway there I had to pull over and do some breathing exercises to calm down. I kept reminding myself, his family deserves to know the truth, and I deserve closure. I arrived a little after 6. The driveway was packed with cars. Clearly the whole family was there. I took a deep breath and went up to the door. Justin's dad, Robert, opened it with a warm smile. "Chloe, glad you're here," he said, giving me a quick hug as he ushered me in. The house smelled of Linda's famous pot roast, and I felt a lump in my throat knowing this might be the last time I'd be here like this. I stepped into the living room, and there was Justin, mid-laugh at something his cousin was saying. When he noticed me, he froze for a split second. He clearly hadn't expected me to actually come. Then, he plastered on a smile and hurried over. He gave me a stiff hug and whispered, "You actually came. We need to talk." His jaw was clenched and his eyes were darting around. He was nervous. I just flashed a bright smile and responded loudly enough for the whole room to hear, "Of course I came. I wouldn't miss your birthday, especially since you said we have some big news to share with everyone." I felt him stiffen next to me. Around the room, faces lit up. Linda clapped her hands in delight. "Oh my goodness, is this what I think it is?" she exclaimed. His sister Kelly shot me a sly grin like she was already picturing an engagement ring. Even his dad was beaming, cracking a joke about finally getting grandkids. Justin's fingernails were practically digging into my arm as he tried to steer me down the hallway. "What are you doing?" he hissed, panic in his eyes. Before I could answer, Linda called out that dinner was ready and everyone should take a seat at the dining table. I slipped out of Justin's grip and sat down next to him. He had no choice but to sit too, looking like he might be sick. As everyone started passing dishes around, I felt my phone buzz with a text. I peeked. Ethan. "On my way, 10 minutes out." Perfect. I put my phone away. Justin leaned toward me and muttered, "Listen, after what happened at the restaurant, you owe me. Don't make a scene." I turned and gave him a sweet, composed smile. In a normal voice, I said, "Oh, don't worry. I'm definitely going to tell your family all about that dinner, Justin. I'm sure they'd love to hear the story." The colour drained from his face. The look of pure panic was better than any birthday gift I could have given myself. Dinner started off tensely. Justin was practically on high alert, cutting me off any time I tried to speak. I mostly stayed quiet and let him squirm. Linda kept things pleasant, asking me about work and my family. I could see Justin flinch every time I answered, like he was afraid I'd spill something then and there. After the salad, Linda mentioned how proud they were of Justin's recent promotion. I nearly spit out my water. Justin's face went pink, but he forced a grin and launched into a long-winded tale about how great he was doing at work. He was throwing around big buzzwords, clearly hoping to gloss over things. I just raised an eyebrow, but kept quiet. Then Robert asked, "So, what happened with that big client account you were leading, son?" Justin hesitated just a moment too long, then spewed some jargon about strategic realignment and client-focused outcomes, basically saying nothing. Kelly shot me a look that said, "Is he for real?" I gave a slight shrug. Linda smiled at both of us and asked gently, "So, you two have some big news for us? Taking the next step?" She looked positively giddy, as if expecting a proposal announcement. Justin almost dropped his fork. Well, it's not really the right time to talk about that," he mumbled, panic in his eyes. That's when Grandma piped up bluntly. "Are you two moving in together or what? Justin said you were looking at apartments." I coughed, surprised. Looking at apartments? News to me. The farthest we'd gotten on that topic was a casual, maybe someday. Justin stammered. Well, we were just looking casually. Nothing set in stone." His ears were turning pink, caught in another lie. Before he could ramble further, I decided to throw my grenade. I said as mildly as I could, "Oh, speaking of apartments, Justin, remember that amazing restaurant you took me to last week? The one where we met your friends Luke and Peter?" I watched Justin's face drain of colour. The table went silent. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," Linda sang out, already heading to the door. From the dining room, we heard her greet the visitor. "Oh, Ethan. What a nice surprise." Justin looked like he might faint. A moment later, Ethan walked in, folder in hand, apologising for interrupting. He explained he had some urgent work papers Justin needed to sign for Monday. Linda welcomed him warmly and insisted he join us for cake later since he was here. Justin looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Robert pulled out the empty chair beside me and said, "No problem at all. Handle the work stuff now. Have a seat, son." Ethan sat, giving me a quick, subtle nod. Justin was silent, gripping his napkin in a death grip. Trying to ease the awkwardness, Robert turned to Ethan and said, "We were just hearing about a big presentation at the office. How'd it go?" Ethan glanced at me and then at Justin. "It went well," he said carefully. "Our boss gave the presentation. Justin and the team helped put it together." In other words, Justin was not the star of the show, something his family clearly hadn't heard until now. "Really?" Robert frowned slightly. That's not how Justin described it." He turned to his son. "Didn't you say you basically ran that whole meeting, Justin?" Before Justin could come up with an excuse, I chimed in sweetly. "Maybe he was just being modest around co-workers, Robert. You know how humble Justin can be." I patted Justin's arm as I said this. I felt him flinch. I was definitely playing with fire, but it was satisfying to watch him squirm. Kelly fixed her gaze on Ethan. "Ethan, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but what exactly is my brother's job title at work? What does he do?" Trust Kelly to cut straight through the nonsense. The room went so silent you could hear the clock ticking in the hall. Ethan looked like a deer in headlights. His eyes flicked to Justin, who was silently pleading with him, then to me. I gave him the slightest nod, like, "Go ahead." He cleared his throat. Justin is an administrative assistant in the marketing department." You could have heard a pin drop. Robert slowly set down his fork. Grandma's eyes widened. Kelly let out a soft, "Wow!" Justin immediately began sputtering. "It's a hybrid role. I do way more than that title sounds like. Things are changing." But no one was buying it. The gap between what he'd been telling them and reality was now stark. Linda, ever the peacemaker, stood up with a strained smile. "Why don't I bring out the cake now? Dessert, anyone?" She hurried into the kitchen, probably grateful for an excuse to break the tension. The second she was out of the room, Kelly turned to me, intent. "Chloe, what happened at that dinner you mentioned earlier?" This was my moment. I took a deep breath, my heart thudding, and began to tell them everything. I spoke up and laid out exactly what had happened at the restaurant. In a steady voice, despite my racing heart, I described how Justin had belittled me all evening, then broke up with me out of the blue in front of his friends, and left me with the $360 bill. I told them the whole awful story, from his remarks about my outfit and my body, to his parting words that a girl like me should be grateful he dated me at all. By the end, Linda's eyes were full of tears, and Robert looked like he was struggling to contain his anger. Justin jumped to his feet. "She's exaggerating, playing the victim," he shouted. He actually tried to claim that I had embarrassed him in front of his colleagues by not fitting in, and that sticking me with the bill was his way of teaching me financial responsibility. Yes, he went there. Grandma let out a disgusted harumph at that. Kelly was shaking her head, looking like she couldn't even with her brother. Robert cut in sharply, telling Justin to sit down. I had never seen his dad speak in that tone. Ethan cleared his throat. In a calm voice, he said, "I'm sorry, but I have to confirm Chloe's telling the truth." He explained to Justin's family that word of the restaurant incident had gotten around at work. He added that Justin had been bragging about putting his girlfriend in her place. To underscore it, Ethan even pulled out his phone and showed Robert a text from one of the co-workers, Peter, describing what happened. There it was. black and white proof. Right then, Linda came back in with the cake, looking bewildered at the scene. Justin standing, me near tears, everyone else deadly quiet. "Did I miss something?" she asked softly. No one answered for a moment. Then Robert said very quietly, "We'll talk about it later. Right now, we need to have a serious discussion about honesty." That was the last straw for Justin. He snapped. "Unbelievable!" he yelled. "You," he jabbed a finger in my direction, "have turned my own family against me." He whirled on Ethan. "And you traitor, coming into my parents' home to humiliate me. You're all just jealous of me." In his fury, he knocked his water glass off the table, sending it clattering and spilling. We all flinched. Justin's face was beet red, twisted with rage. Finally, he spat out at me. "A girl like you should be grateful I even bothered with you." Linda gasped, one hand flying to her mouth. Grandma muttered something like, "Well, I never..." Kelly looked like she might start yelling herself. I felt oddly calm in that moment. I stood up to face him. "The only thing I'm grateful for," I said softly, "is that I finally see who you really are." Justin stared at me, chest heaving, then grabbed his car keys off the table. He stormed out of the dining room. A second later, the front door slammed so hard I thought the frame might crack. A decorative plate in the hallway rattled and fell to the floor with a crash. And just like that, he was gone. For a long moment, nobody said anything. The only sound was the birthday cake's candles softly sizzling. Linda had lit them in the kitchen, not realising the drama unfolding. Linda looked at all of us, cake in hand, utterly confused. Robert finally broke the silence. "I think," he said with a weary sigh, "we've had enough excitement for one night." Linda set the cake down on the table, her hands trembling, and immediately turned to me. "Chloe, I am so sorry," she began, eyes brimming with tears. "I don't even have words. I had no idea. I'm just so sorry for what you went through." She looked on the verge of sobbing herself. I quickly hugged her and told her none of this was her fault. My own eyes were wet, but I'd promised myself I wouldn't cry any more over Justin, so I blinked the tears back. Robert put a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for being honest with us," he said quietly. He looked both angry and heartbroken, like he couldn't decide which to feel. "I'm ashamed of how my son treated you. I wish I'd known sooner. I'm sorry." Kelly came over and squeezed my hand, murmuring that I didn't deserve any of this. Even Grandma tottered over to pat my arm and say, "You're a good girl, dear. He was raised better than that, or we thought so." Amid all the apologies and commotion, Ethan was gathering up his folder and coat, looking mortified to have been part of such a family implosion. "I'm sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Harper," he said to Linda and Robert. "This isn't how I imagined tonight would go. I just couldn't keep quiet when I knew the truth." Robert gave him a sad, grateful smile and thanked him for speaking up. In some bizarre way, Ethan and I had just tag-teamed a family intervention. I half expected someone to ask me to leave after all that, given the circumstances, but instead, Linda insisted I stay. "Please don't run off, sweetheart. We can at least sing happy birthday." "Or not," she added, realising the birthday boy had stormed out of his own party. We all kind of chuckled at the absurdity. In the end, we decided to have cake anyway, without Justin. It ended up being one of the strangest birthday parties ever, eating cake without the guest of honour. But somehow it wasn't as awkward as you'd expect. They were all so kind and concerned about me, making sure I was okay. We even shared a few stories and laughs in between the shock. I think everyone was relieved to have the truth out, even though it was painful. After cake, I helped Linda carry plates into the kitchen. As we washed up, she kept apologising through quiet tears. "I just don't understand what happened to my son," she whispered. "We didn't raise him to be like this. The lies, the cruelty. It's like I don't even know who he is." I didn't know what to say. I told her sometimes people hide who they really are, and that as hard as this was, at least now everyone could see things clearly. She asked me if there had been warning signs. I admitted that, looking back, there were small red flags I'd ignored. His constant need to brag, the little lies, the way he put me down as jokes. I said I was sorry I hadn't realised sooner either. She hugged me and told me I was a strong young woman. When I finally said my goodbyes, Robert walked me to my car. The night was cool and clear, and I was exhausted. Robert thanked me again for having the courage to stand up and tell the truth. He said quietly, "I'm sorry you had to be the one to open our eyes. I know it probably wasn't easy." I just nodded, telling him I cared about them, and felt they deserved honesty. He looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he just sighed and shook his head, clearly disappointed in Justin. I noticed Linda and Kelly standing in the doorway, watching to make sure I got to my car safely. Before I got in, Kelly called out, "Text me when you get home, okay?" I promised I would. Ethan had parked down the street and was waiting by his car, probably to make sure I was all right to drive. He offered to follow me home, but I told him I'd be fine. We stood under the streetlight for a moment, both of us looking a bit shell-shocked. Well, he managed a wry smile. That was eventful. I let out a breathy laugh. Not exactly how I expected tonight to go, I replied. He then mentioned, almost apologetically, that Justin had also been caught faking some client emails at work and was on his final warning. He doubted Justin would even have a job come Monday. I shook my head and said, I almost felt sorry for Justin. Almost. His desperate need to seem successful was going to be his downfall in every aspect of life. I thanked Ethan for having my back and told him to take care. You too, he said gently. And I'm really sorry you went through all this. With that, we both drove off. The minute I pulled away, a wave of emotion hit me. Not sadness, exactly. More like a weird mix of relief and exhaustion. By the time I got home, I was bone tired, the kind of deep fatigue you feel after a long emotional battle. I walked into my apartment, kicked off my heels, and just stood there in the quiet for a minute. It was over. The truth was out. I should have been devastated, I suppose, but mostly I felt at peace, like I could finally breathe again. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and noticed my phone blinking with notifications. 3 missed calls from Rachel and a few texts asking if I was okay. I was about to call her back when a new text from Justin popped up. I stared at his name for a second, surprised. I opened it and it read, "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." Amazingly, I didn't feel a surge of fear or panic at his words. I just felt tired. I blocked his number without responding and turned off my phone. I went to bed that night, feeling oddly proud of myself. I had stood up to him, exposed his lies, and come out the other side. I hoped that was the last I'd ever hear from Justin. At that moment, I truly believed it was. I was wrong. The saga wasn't quite over yet. I woke up Sunday morning to 13 missed calls and a bunch of frantic messages. My phone practically blew up. There were 5 missed calls from Linda, a few from Kelly, 2 from Ethan, and some unknown numbers that I later found out were concerned co-workers. My stomach did that horrible drop as I scrolled through the notifications. I thought maybe someone had died or something. I called Linda back first. She answered on the first ring, sounding exhausted and worried. "Oh, thank goodness, Chloe. Are you all right?" she asked. I was groggy and confused. "I'm okay. What's going on?" According to Linda, after leaving his birthday dinner, Justin had completely lost it. He'd gone on a rampage. He showed up at his ex-girlfriend's apartment at 2:08 a.m, pounding on her door and screaming about how I'd ruined his life. This poor ex had no idea what he was babbling about and was terrified. She called Kelly, who had to go drag him away. But that wasn't all. Justin had also been blowing up people's phones and social media with unhinged messages. Linda said he posted a long, rambling rant on Facebook about being surrounded by traitors and how people would regret betraying him. He sent nasty texts to Ethan, threatening to ruin him at work. Pretty rich, considering Justin was about to get fired himself. And worst of all, he had shared my home address with one of his buddies in a private message, saying he was going to come make me pay for humiliating him. That buddy thankfully alerted Linda immediately, hence all the frantic calls to me. By the time I finished that call with Linda, I had a splitting headache. I thanked her for telling me and promised I'd stay on guard. She insisted that she and Kelly were coming over right away to make sure I was safe. I didn't really want to be a bother, but I also didn't want to be alone given Justin's state of mind. I agreed, and she said they'd be at my place soon. The second I hung up, I looked around at my apartment and cringed. Despite my half-hearted tidying on Friday, the place was a disaster again from my weekend of wallowing. Nothing motivates a cleaning spree like the imminent arrival of your ex's mum and sister, I guess. I dashed around picking up clothes, tossing empty snack containers, and scrubbing a few dishes. I had just thrown on a bra and a clean shirt and run a brush through my hair when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Linda and Kelly holding a tray of coffees and a box of pastries. I ushered them in, apologising for the state of my place, though I'd miraculously gotten it looking semi-decent. They waved off my apologies and immediately started asking if I was alright, if I'd heard from Justin, etc. We settled in my living room, and I explained that I'd blocked Justin's number after his lovely text and hadn't heard anything since. Honestly, I was more exhausted than scared at that point. Kelly gave me a fierce hug and said, "If he shows his face here, he'll have to deal with us and the cops." Linda nodded, though she looked heartbroken that her son was the one causing all this fear. As we sipped our coffees, they filled me in on more backstory. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Justin had major lying issues. In college, Kelly said, he falsely claimed to friends that he was on the baseball team when he never made the cut. Once, he even invented a fake girlfriend for a while to impress people until he got caught. It seems he's been crafting a fake image of himself for years. "I think he needs professional help," Linda said quietly. Hard to argue with that. My phone kept buzzing with notifications. News of Justin's online meltdown had spread. Friends were texting, asking what the heck was going on. I reassured everyone that I was okay and that things were being handled. About 20 minutes into their visit, the doorbell rang again. I froze, heart in my throat. Was it Justin? Kelly peeked through the peephole and let out a breath. It was Ethan. Apparently Justin had been blowing up his phone all morning too, and Ethan wanted to warn me in person since Justin had mentioned paying me a visit. I invited him in, and we did quick introductions, though Linda and Kelly already knew him from the birthday fiasco. So now the four of us were camped out in my living room. My ex's mom, my ex's sister, my ex's co-worker, and me. We half joked that we could start a support group. If it wasn't so terrifying, it would have been comical. We were all on edge, listening for any sign of Justin. And sure enough, before long, there was a loud bang, bang, bang on my front door. We all jumped. Justin's voice rang out from the hallway, slurred and furious. "I know you're in there, Chloe. Open the door." He was actually here. My heart lurched into my throat. Ethan shot to his feet, and I immediately grabbed my phone to call downstairs security. Thank goodness for my building's security desk. Over Justin's continued pounding and yelling, I urgently told the guard on duty that my ex was at my door trying to get in. Linda looked on the verge of tears, and Kelly moved beside me, face like thunder. In the hallway, Justin kept ranting, calling me a liar and yelling, "You'll pay for this!" I heard one of my neighbours crack open their door, then quickly slam it when Justin unleashed a string of curses. It felt like an eternity, but only a minute or two passed before I heard the blessed sound of the security guard at the end of the hall. "Sir, you need to leave now, or I'm calling the police," the guard barked. There was scuffling and more incoherent yelling from Justin, but I didn't dare open the door. Through the peephole, I saw the guard, a burly security guard I'd seen before, positioning himself between Justin and my door. Justin was enraged, but clearly outmatched. After a bit more shouting, he eventually staggered off toward the elevators. The guard knocked on my door gently to confirm Justin was gone from the floor. "I saw him head to the parking lot," he said. "Do you want me to call the police?" I glanced at Linda and Kelly, who were already pulling on their jackets to go after Justin themselves. We told the guard to stay on alert and to call the cops if Justin came back, but that Linda and Kelly would handle getting him home. They were mortified and kept apologising as they left to track him down. Linda insisted her husband was on his way to come collect Justin immediately. I could only nod, feeling equal parts grateful and horrified. After Linda and Kelly rushed off, Ethan and I sat on my couch in a sort of stunned silence. He finally broke it with a shaky laugh and said, "Well, that de-escalated eventually." I let out a breath I didn't realise I'd been holding, and managed a small laugh too. My nerves were shot. I thanked Ethan over and over for being there. He waved it off, saying there was no way he was about to let Justin terrorise me if he could help it. We chatted a bit more as the adrenaline ebbed. Eventually, Ethan needed to head out. Before he left, he made me promise to call if I needed anything at all, and I promised I would. By Sunday evening, my apartment was quiet again. Rachel came over with an overnight bag, insisting on staying with me just in case, and so I wouldn't have to be alone. I didn't argue. I was so grateful to not be alone after the day I'd had. We ordered pizza, curled up on the couch, and put on some trashy reality TV for a dose of normalcy. Between bites of pepperoni pizza, I told her everything that had happened at the birthday dinner and that morning. Her eyes were as big as saucers. "Girl, your life turned into a full-on soap opera," she said. I couldn't argue with that. In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to normal. Justin was indeed fired. He never even went back to work after that weekend. He left town to stay with an uncle in another state. His social media went silent, and his parents cut him off and insisted he get help. Meanwhile, I've been healing and moving forward. I rearranged my apartment and got rid of anything that reminded me of Justin, turning the space back into my own haven. I've become good friends with Ethan, much to Rachel's delight. It's nice to have someone who witnessed the whole saga and understands why I have trust issues now. Looking back, I'm not angry anymore. If anything, I feel so relieved and oddly grateful. Grateful that I learned the truth before making bigger life decisions with the wrong person. Grateful for the friends and even his family who supported me through the chaos. It was a nightmare at the time, but I came out knowing I really deserve so much better. And I do. Everyone truly does. Whatever happens to Justin now, he's not my problem anymore.